Hey there, friends, true believers, and newcomers alike. I'm Superfly Comics Guy, and I have been busy playing a lot of God of War Ragnarok, but I'm here now, here to review the Spider-Man Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 1. That's right, we are continuing our Clone Saga reviews. I know this is a book a lot of people are looking for. It's not currently in print, so, thought I'd offer my thoughts. We'll be going through the cover, the spine, the contents collected, the build quality, and as I mentioned, a flip through where I can talk about some of my thoughts, opinions, and recommendations. So, if you like this video, you know how to show it, and if you're a nerd like me, feel free to leave your own thoughts down there in the comments. But, for now, grab a seat with your clone, and let's start diving into this book. Okay, so first things first, we have the dust jacket to the Spider-Man Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 1. Didn't come with any variant covers, I don't believe. I think this is the only one available. If this book gets reprinted, which I think it eventually will, we might see some variant covers, but for now, nothing. There is the spine for you, and I do love me that 90s Spider-Man font. That screams nostalgia to me. There's a new web slinger in town. We got our cover gallery here featuring all of the issues in this book. And oh man, oh god, oh man.
Oh man, oh god, oh man.
There are a lot. We've got Web of Scarlet Spider 1 through 4, Amazing Scarlet Spider 1 through 2, Scarlet Spider 1 through 2, Spectacular Scarlet Spider 1 through 2, Scarlet Spider Unlimited number 1, Green Goblin number 3, Sensational Spider-Man 0 through 3, and Wizard Mini-Comic, Amazing Spider-Man 407 through 410, Annual 96, Spider-Man 64 through 67, New Warriors 67, Spectacular Spider-Man 230 to 233, Spider-Man Punisher Family Plot 1 through 2, Spider-Man Holiday Special 1995, Spider-Man The Final Chapter 1 through 4, Spider-Man Unlimited number 11, Spider-Man Team Up 2 to 3, and material from Venom Along Came a Spider 1 through 4. Jeez, I always get astounded at the amount of crossovers during the 90s. And a cover price of $125 US, $158 Canadian. Back to the front so we can take a look under the dust jacket. And look at that, we got a wraparound cover. So you know what that means. We gotta open it up so I can show it to you guys a bit better. Let's do that. And there it is. A gorgeous wraparound cover by Mr. Dan Jurgens. Very much like that image. And we'll see it again when we flip through the book. So let's do that. Okay, so the contents of the Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 1. No spoilers, of course. I'll be as vague as I possibly can. But just keep in mind, I am flipping through artwork, so visually there might be a spoiler, but I won't actually discuss it. Alrighty though, so Ben Reilly, we are neck deep in the 90s. Where the heck are we? So, an important thing to note, as the name implies, this picks up with Ben Reilly taking up the mantle of Spider-Man. Peter Parker has hung up the webs. He's trying to spend his life without Spider-Man and just focus on Mary Jane and building his family, while Ben Reilly has taken over duties as New York's friendly neighborhood wall crawler. So, he's kind of back to the old Parker luck, quote unquote. He's looking for a job, kind of down on his luck, not a lot of money. Kind of getting back into the swing of things, shall we say. We open up the book with this, oh god, this very goofy virtual reality saga, but it's like virtual reality a la 90s. Ben Reilly's mentor, Seward Trainer, somehow ends up stuck in VR. There's a new Dr. Octopus who's cooking up all sorts of schemes. Yeah, this was like during that awkward period in the 90s where like the internet was super new and not many people quite knew how it worked. So the stories you could get away with were just completely zany. A lot of the time, the whole like quote-unquote futuristic stuff in this omnibus feels very much like the show Spider-Man Unlimited, if anyone's seen that. Like, the stories in here, I'll be honest, they're dumb. But at least Ben Reilly acts more like what I expect from Spider-Man. Whereas in, like, for example, the Clone Saga Omnibus Volume 2, I was astounded by some of the decisions and character moments that Peter Parker was having. But anyway, by this point in time, Ben Reilly is still going by the name of Scarlet Spider, but his reputation is kind of starting to hit the toilet. People in his daily life keep recognizing him as Peter, and it's starting to stir up confusion. You know, what the heck is Peter still doing in New York? I thought he moved out with Mary Jane to a different state. So that starts causing some problems. So Ben Reilly is forced to change his look, not just his face, but he ends up getting a new costume as well. And we can see this gorgeous art by Dan Jurgens. I really, really like the way he draws Spider-Man. But yeah, new costume. Really like the costume as well. I wish we saw more of it. I wish we would see it, for example, in, like, I don't know, bonus costumes in video games. You don't see this Ben Reilly costume that often. But anyway, a lot of this book is just kind of one-off or really short arcs just kind of mixed together. Like, there's a crossover with the Punisher involving the Mafia and Tombstone. There is a new Green Goblin in town whose identity is surprising, I suppose you can say. There are some fun Mysterio issues in here. And yeah, Mysterio in general is just a really fun villain. I feel like because he's so focused on, like, special effects and illusions, the writer and artist can just do whatever they want. Like, the issues just become a drug trip a lot of the time. There's some fun appearances with a Black Cat and Silver Surfer. There's a Venom crossover in here called, like, Venom Along Came a Spider, which, I don't know, it's kind of meh. But in general, it's just a mishmash of stories, and in that sense, it really feels like they were trying hard to make this series feel like the Silver Age again, the good old days after the mess that was the Clone Saga. But, you know, because of the baggage of the Clone Saga, it definitely feels like some of the stories in here are bogged down by that. I mean, Clone Saga Volume 1 started off pretty good, but then it kind of dipped into just mediocrity and then veered into some pretty bad stuff towards the end of the book. And then the majority of Clone Saga Volume 2 was honestly insultingly bad, I found. But this is more similar to Clone Saga Volume 1. It starts off pretty interesting, but I found that it just kind of starts to meander after a while for a good portion of the book. So I mean, while this series is trying really hard to kind of return to form, and to be fair, it does achieve that at times. There are some fun stories in here. It's more so just kind of a return to mediocrity that the likes of which we saw in the Clone Saga Volume 1. And not just that, but Ben is constantly recapping the Clone Saga to try to, like, get people up to speed. He's like, oh, for 5 years I thought I was a clone, but I actually wasn't a clone, and now I'm living my life as Spider-Man again. I don't know, it's just really awkward writing a lot of the time. And to be honest, it really feels weird to think about how, like, Ben hasn't experienced things like, I don't know, fighting Carnage. Because that's something that Peter did, but not Ben. I don't know. Speaking of Carnage, there is actually a really, really cool Carnage story in here. But anyway, I think to get the most enjoyment out of this book, just because of all the, like, weird timeline discrepancies and stuff, you kind of just have to treat this as an alternate universe Spider-Man. Ben taking up the mantle and doing his own thing because he has his own supporting cast, his own characters. I mean, there is some overlap with Peter, but it just feels like they were trying to do something different here. There is a really cool flashback story in here, I remember, which was a really cool blast from the past. It just kind of focused on, like, Peter in his high school / college years, and man, when you compare that flashback story in here to, like, the rest of the stuff that's in this book, it just shows you how hollow this stuff is in comparison. It's trying hard to harken back to the good old days, but it's missing something. As far as the art in here goes, I mean, it's pretty decent a lot of the time. There is some really good stuff in here. There is some some artists I wasn't a huge fan of. Generally, I feel like 90s paneling can be kind of a mess. Kind of just uninhibited and all over the place a lot of the time. And there are some kind of annoying gimmicky sideways panels where like the panels, instead of being vertical like this, they're like spread across the page, which I don't really like. There were some, what I thought were like blurry scans or something at first, but actually it seems like that was intentional. It happened a few times, but it just, whenever they wanted to create like an out of focus effect, they used like that blurry scan method or whatever you want to call it. But in terms of artists in here, overall it's pretty good. I mean, you have Mark Bagley art in here. I wouldn't call it Mark Bagley's best work, but it's still Mark Bagley, so it's still a win. But you also get John Romita Jr. in here, Bill Sienkiewicz, and as I mentioned, Dan Jurgens, of course. Now, normally by this point I would talk about the extras in this book, but this book is kind of a weird one. It doesn't actually have an extra section. What it does is it'll just put like a variant cover every now and then on like the back of one of the issue covers. I mean, there is a pretty tiny extras section. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could consider this an extras section, but there's like some brief little character bios, some variants here. But there's no like dedicated extras section here. You just kind of get the occasional variant cover on the back of an issue. As far as build quality goes, really, really good binding. 1,304 pages is what we get. And look at how big that eye is. Very, very good. Lays over pretty well as a result. The pages themselves, they're not the thickest, but I don't believe I ever noticed any color bleed or anything like that while I was reading. So yeah, generally pretty good. There's unfortunately no table of contents or page numbers though, so that might frustrate some people. But now it's time to wrap up some thoughts here. Overall, I wouldn't say this was as insultingly bad as the Clone Saga Omnibus Volume 2. And it definitely starts out pretty interesting, but I found that my interest kind of just fell off the further I went into it. Like, it's not necessarily bad. There are some fun stories to be had in here, but some story arcs, like that virtual reality one, just drag on for far too long, and the entire book, the story just starts to meander after a while. I suppose a new reader could start reading this, reading here, just because of how, you know, it's a new Spider-Man, they're setting up kind of a new cast. Or if you're interested in 90s comics, but honestly, there are so many other better Spidey stories out there that it's kind of difficult to recommend this one. But anyway, that's just my opinion. When you get the chance, I hope you can give this a shot and let me know your opinion. That's been my review of the Spider-Man Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 1. I'm going to go play some more God of War, but you let me know what you thought about this book if you've read it, or the review. I hope to catch you in another video real soon. Thank you so much for joining me. Have yourself a great day. I've been Superfly Comics Guy, and until next time, guys, keep reading. See ya. So here we are. Deke. What? What was I even trying to say? We're neck deep in the 90s. Maybe that's what I was trying to say. Oh man.